The dire call for help. The galaxy had known peace for centuries, yet one quiet evening, the tranquil world of Aranos was shaken by a threat beyond anything they'd ever imagined. The people of Aranos were a peaceful species known for their knowledge and artistry. They had no standing military, only a modest defensive fleet, and simple defense of shields. For the first time in generations, they felt genuine fear. The war in lights in the council hall flashed urgently. As grim news arrived, a massive enemy fleet had entered their sector. This wasn't a mere scouting party, or a lost traveler. No, this fleet was organized, armed to the teeth, and advancing with a clear intent. Aranos was its target. In the council hall, the elders gathered, each one looking more worried than the last council leader. Me, a wise and calm figure who had guided her people for many years, struggled to keep her own fear in check as she addressed the group. Our defense forces are no match for a fleet of this size, she began, her voice steady, but with a hint of strain. We have tried to contact our allies, but they are all too far to reach us in time. The room fell silent. The other council members exchanged uneasy glances, feeling a profound helplessness. They knew their fate was sealed if they stood alone. The people of Aranos had seen images of other worlds, where entire populations had been forced to surrender, enslaved by very enemies now descending upon them. After a moment, Elder Ryan, an elder known for his wisdom and knowledge of ancient stories, cleared his throat and spoke. There is one possibility. It is a long shot, a gamble beyond any reasonable hope, but desperate times call for desperate measures. The other council members turned to him, their curiosity piqued by the elder's cryptic tone. Council leader Me asked, "What are you suggesting?" Ryan leaned forward, his gaze distant as he recalled tales passed down from a time long ago in the far reaches of the galaxy. There exists a species known for its resilience, its ability to overcome impossible odds. I speak of the humans, a race said to live on the planet they call Earth. Though we know little about them, legends say that they have survived countless threats and hardships. Perhaps they could help us now. The council members looked uncertain, exchanging wary glances. Many had heard stories of the humans, beings known for their ingenuity, their fierce determination, and their unpredictable nature. They were a mystery, both respected and feared among the stars. One council member voiced what everyone was thinking. But the humans, they are known to be aggressive, even reckless. Could we truly trust them to come to our aid? Elder Ryan nodded thoughtfully. It is true they are unpredictable, but that is why I believe they could stand against an enemy as powerful as ours, if even half of the tales about them are true. They possess courage and strength that we lack. I do not suggest we trust them blindly, but given our current circumstances, they may be our only hope. Leader Me took a deep breath, weighing the risk. She could feel the eyes of her people on her, each one filled with fear and expectation. She knew that a choice had to be made, and quickly send the message. She finally said, her voice firm, "Tell the humans that Aranos calls for their help." With those words, the council members began the process of sending a distress signal, crafting it carefully to reach the humans, hoping it would be understood. They had no guarantee it would reach Earth in time, or if it would reach it at all. But they had no other options. The message was simple but urgent, describing the dire threat facing Aranos and pleading for assistance. The transmission left the Ananthan communication arrays, traveling across the vast expanse of space toward Earth. Meanwhile, outside the council chamber, Arthans went about their lives unaware of the looming danger. Families gathered, children played in the fields, and artists painted the skies. There was an almost painful beauty in the innocence of that evening, a beauty that might vanish if help did not come. As the hours passed, tension filled the council hall. Leader Mira remained by the communication console, watching and waiting, hoping against hope. Every moment felt like an eternity, and doubt began to creep in. Perhaps no one would come, perhaps their message was lost in the cold void of space. Then, just when they were beginning to lose hope, a small light blinked on the communication console. A response was coming through. The message was short, but it sent a wave of relief and disbelief through the council. "Earth has received your call for help. Humanity will answer." Leader Me read the message aloud, her voice wavering with both relief and amazement therein. That moment, a glimmer of hope rekindled. The Aranth had taken a gamble, and it had paid off. Now they could only wait and prepare, hoping that the legends about humanity were true. In the silence that followed, Mira looked around the room, meeting each council member's eyes. "We may not know what to expect," she said softly, "but we will stand ready. If humanity answers our call, we will be ready to fight for our world as the council dispersed me, felt a strange mix of anticipation and fear. Somewhere in the vastness of space, a human ship was making its way toward them, carrying beings they had only heard of in legends, what they were like, how they would help, and what they would bring. These were questions no one could answer. But in that quiet moment under the silent stars, one thing was certain: humanity was coming. And for Arano's, hope was alive once more. Humanity's arrival. The days felt like years, as the people of Arthos waited, hope mingling with apprehension. Every citizen knew something monumental was approaching, though few understood the full weight of it. For the first time in generations, fear gripped their world finally, as the sky was painted in the soft colors of an evening sunset. The alert sounded from the horizon. A massive ship appeared, dark and imposing against the pastel skies. It was unlike anything the Arthans had ever seen, a human warship, a relic of battles long forgotten, yet maintained with precision and power. The hull was armored with an array of weapons, and its engines pulsed with a strange, steady energy, like a beast calmly awaiting its moment to strike. Council leader Mira, along with her advisors, watched in awe from the observation platform. As the ship descended toward their landing field, whispers filled the air. Some spoke of relief, others of fear. Mira herself felt the surge of emotions she could barely contain. The humans had answered. Now they would find out if the legends held any truth. As the ship's ramp lowered, a team of humans emerged. They moved with a quiet confidence, clad in advanced suits that glimmered under the Arthan sun. Their leader was a tall figure with a strong, calm demeanor, his face marked by experience and resolve. Mara stepped forward to greet them, her voice steady but respectful. Welcome to Aranos. We are grateful for your arrival in our hour of need. The human leader nodded, a slight smile breaking his otherwise stoic expression. I am Commander Raylan of Earth's Defense Fleet. We receive your call, and we're here to help. His voice was calm, each word carrying a weight of reassurance that seemed to settle the nerves of those listening. As they spoke, Mira felt a strange sense of ease. There was something powerful, yet deeply reassuring about the humans. It was as though they had faced similar threats countless times before, emerging stronger each time. Yet beneath their calm exterior lay an intensity, a readiness to act that was almost intimidating. Commander Raylan glanced around, his eyes sharp and assessing. We've read the information in your message. It's clear that your enemy is well armed and organized. We've seen their tactics before. He paused, a steely glint in his eye. But we faced worse, and we're here to make sure they don't touch a single citizen of Aranos. Me was struck by the sheer determination in his words. It was as if the fate of Aranos had now become personal to him, something he would protect at all costs. For the first time, she felt a genuine surge of hope that the impossible might just be within reach. Raylan's second in command, Lieutenant Ka, spoke up. We've already assessed the incoming fleet's approach and have a strategy to counter their assault. However, we'll need your cooperation to strengthen certain defenses on your end. Her tone was direct, efficient, yet there was a warmth in her gaze, a silent promise that they were in this together. As the humans began explaining their plan, Mara felt a sense of awe. Their approach was both complex and adaptable, nearly crafted by minds accustomed to surviving under the most extreme conditions. They had brought with them advanced weaponry, shields, and technology far beyond anything Aranos had seen before. Mira watched the human team, noting their unity, the way they communicated with subtle glances and nods. It was clear that they had fought side by side for years, each one trusting the other with their lives. These humans were more than soldiers. They were a family bound by loyalty, forged through countless battles. Raylan turned back to me, his gaze steady. We'll begin defensive preparations immediately. I want your people to stay calm and follow our instructions. If we work together, we can stop this threat before it reaches your cities. Me nodded, her voice filled with gratitude. We trust you, Commander Raylan. Whatever you need, our resources are at your disposal. Raylan gave a brief nod of acknowledgement, then turned to his team, signaling them to begin. The humans moved with precision, setting up defensive lines, placing energy barriers, and sharing technology with the Aranan forces under the humans' guidance. The previously unprepared Aranan defenses began to transform into a powerful force, ready to face the advancing enemy. As the night settled over Aranos, the humans worked tirelessly, their focus unwavering. The people watched from afar, a quiet reverence in their eyes, as they observed these mysterious, resilient beings who had come to their aid. For them, humanity had become more than a legend. It was now their last hope of force standing between them, and certain destruction by the time dawn approached. Aranos had been fortified, its cities shielded by human technology, its soldiers trained to fight alongside Earth's elite. The people felt a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. They knew the enemy was close, yet the humans had brought with them a confidence, a determination that was impossible to ignore. And as the first light of dawn broke, me stood beside Ran on the observation deck watching the horizon, with a mixture of hope and dread. She knew that by the end of the day they would face their enemy. But with humanity by their side, she dared to believe that Arthos might yet see another sunrise. The first clash as the sun rose over Aranos, the warning alarms blared across the planet, signaling the enemy's approach. Aranan citizens and soldiers steeled themselves, watching the skies with a mix of fear and resolve. For the first time, they would stand not only with their own forces, but side by side with the fabled defenders of Earth. Commander Raylan and his team were at the command center, mapping out the incoming enemy fleet on the screens. A vast dark wave of ships moved toward them, each bristling with weaponry designed to strike fear into any opponent. But as Raylan studied the formation, he saw something else, a pattern, a predictability that made him smirk. Typical formation, he muttered, leaning closer. They think they're unstoppable. His voice held a tone of calm confidence, one that made even the most nervous Ananthan officer ERS feel reassured. Beside him, Lieutenant K was busy giving instructions to the Arthan forces, helping them understand the new technology and tactics that the humans had introduced. She spoke clearly, her tone firm, yet encouraging. Remember, stay focused and stay together. We're not just defending Oranos, we're making a stand. And we'll do it as one. Mara, standing nearby, couldn't help but feel a swell of pride and an anticipation. She knew her people were capable, but now armed with Earth's advanced technology and the experience of its warriors, they were ready for a battle like never before. The first enemy ships broke through the atmosphere, streaking down toward the planet's defenses. Aranan anti-aircraft batteries fired, filling the sky with bright, deadly lines of energy. The humans' warship, hovering in low orbit, activated its shields and defensive weapons, unleashing precise, devastating blasts at the attackers. On my mark, open fire. Raylan commanded. His voice was calm, unwavering. The human weapons fired in synchronization, sending powerful shock waves through the enemy ranks. Explosions livied the sky as ships shattered under the relentless assault. The Aranan forces, inspired by the humans' coordination, mirrored their movements, focusing their fire and slowly pushing the enemy back. But the enemy fleet was vast and relentless. As more ships descended, they began to adapt, targeting weak points in Arano defenses and seeking to break through the protective lines. Raylan watched the enemy's approach, noting the changes in their tactics. They're adjusting fast, he murmured, turning to his team. He quickly issued new orders: form a shield around the eastern quadrant, coordinate with the Aran to cover our flanks. We need to maintain this position at all costs. Kaya relayed the instructions, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had fought and survived countless battles. Aranan and human forces moved swiftly, reforming their lines and bracing for the next wave of enemy attacks. The enemy ships came down harder, more organized, and with a renewed fury, explosions echoed across the landscape as the two sides clashed, each pushing the other to their limits. Aranan soldiers, fueled by the presence of their newfound allies, fought with a tenacity they hadn't known. They possessed. Meanwhile, the humans, calm and focused, were like a wall of steel, their experience showing in every maneuver, every shot. At one point, an enemy fighter broke through and targeted the command center. Streak of light and energy sped toward them faster than anyone could react. But before it could reach its mark, a human sniper from Ron's team took aim and fired, hitting the target with flawless precision. The enemy ship exploded midair, raining debris harmlessly over the battlefield. Nice shot, Mira breathed, barely able to process what had just happened. The human soldier gave a slight nod, already scanning the horizon for the next threat as the battle raged on. Commander Ron's eyes narrowed, analyzing the enemy movements with a razor-sharp gaze. He saw their pattern, recognized their commander's tactics. He knew they were still testing Arano's defenses, trained to find a weak point. And if they did, they would strike without mercy. Turning to me, Raylan spoke with a calm intensity. They're still probing, looking for a weak spot, but they don't know who they're dealing with yet. He gave a rare, reassuring smile, and we're going to show them exactly What humanity can do with renewed orders, the human and Iranan forces tightened their formation. The humans' advanced weaponry and tactics combined with the Iranan fierce determination began to wear down the enemy forces. Ron's team unleashed a wave of precision strikes, taking out enemy ships one by one slowly. But surely the tide began to turn. The enemy fleet, which had descended with such confidence, started to falter. Ships retreated, some desperately dodging fire, others consumed in the flames of their own destruction. The skies cleared, leaving only the remains of defeated ships drifting like broken shadows against the lightning dawn. When the last enemy ship fell, a hush spread across the battlefield. Iranan soldiers, bruised and weary, stared in awe at their human allies. The legends had been true. These humans were more than warriors, they were protectors, determined to hold the line, even in the face of impossible odds. As Mi stood beside Raylan, watching the aftermath, she knew this victory was only the beginning. The enemy was still up there, regrouping, readying for another assault. But now, with the humans by their side, Mara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. "Hope, Commander," she said quietly. "Thank you, you and your people. You've given us a chance." Raylan looked at her, his gaze steady. "This was just the first step. There's more to come, and we'll need to be ready." He looked out over the battlefield, determination in his eyes. "But together, we can face anything they throw at us." A new strategy unfolds with the first clash behind them. The Arthans and their human allies began to regroup. The battlefield was quiet for the moment, filled only with the hum of machinery and the muffled voices of soldiers checking their gear. The enemy had retreated, but everyone knew it wouldn't be long before they struck again. And this time they would come prepared. Inside the command center, Commander Raylan was already discussing the next phase with his team. His eyes scanned the holographic display, mapping out the enemy's likely movements and pinpointing areas where the Iranan forces could strengthen their defense. These aren't mindless invaders." Raylan began, his voice steady. "They're testing us, seeing how far we can go. We need to disrupt their strategy before they adapt." Mi watched, captivated. The humans' approach to warfare was unlike anything her people had ever seen. Instead of waiting for the enemy to come to them, the humans analyzed every move, calculated every response, and looked for ways to control the battlefield. It was as if they were playing a game of strategy at a level she hadn't imagined. As Raylan continued explaining his plan, Lieutenant Ka spoke up, gesturing to a section of the map. "They've exposed some vulnerabilities in their flanks here and here. If we can strike there while they are regrouping, we could weaken their core formation." Mira nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. The Iranan approach to battle had always been defensive, holding strong lines and waiting for the enemy to tire out. But now she saw the power of taking the fight to the enemy, of unsettling them and forcing them to make mistakes. The Iranan leaders, some of whom had been skeptical of the humans at first, now leaned in, hanging on every word. There was a new glimmer of hope in their eyes, a belief that they could not only survive, but also push back against an enemy that had long terrified them. When the briefing concluded, Rail and addressed the entire group. "This won't be easy. We're outnumbered and facing an enemy determined to crush us. But they underestimate us. And that's their first mistake." He looked around, his gaze meeting each Iranan soldier and leader. "They don't know the strength we have here, the unity that's growing between us. Together, we'll fight, not just to defend Oranos, but to show them that we won't back down. Not now, not ever." The room filled with a quiet but powerful energy. Raylan's words resonated deeply, with everyone rekindling the determination that had been shaken by the enemy's arrival. As they prepared to mobilize, Mira approached Raylan, a question in her eyes. "Commander, do you think we really have a chance against all of them?" Raylan looked at her, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I fought in wars across galaxies. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the will to fight isn't just about numbers or weapons. It's about the people standing beside you, the resolve to hold the line, and the refusal to surrender. And right now I see all of that here." She nodded, absorbing his words. "Then let's show them who we are." The soldiers took their positions as the new plan unfolded. Iranan fighters alongside the human team, stealthily MVE toward the identified weak spots in the enemy formation. The tension was thick, each person aware that the coming battle would determine the fate of Oranos. As the enemy fleet began to approach once more, the skies darkened and the hum of engines grew louder. But this time, Raylan and his team were ready with a swift command. The joint forces launched their counterattack, taking the enemy by surprise and disrupting their formation. Explosions lit up the sky as the Aranan and human forces struck with precision, cutting through the enemy's lines. The invaders, who had once believed their victory assured, now found themselves on the defensive, watching from the command center. Mira's heart raced. They were turning the tide, forcing the enemy to retreat for the first time. Aranos wasn't just surviving, they were fighting back, striking with a strength they hadn't known they possessed. As the battle raged on, me realized that something had changed, not just on the battlefield, but within her people. The fear that had once guided them was giving way to something new, courage fueled by the belief that they were not alone. And as the final wave of enemy ships broke and scattered, one thing became clear: the fight for Aranos had only just begun. The unbreakable alliance, the victory from the last skirmish, had given Aranos a brief, precious moment to breathe. While their defense held, the people began to feel something new, hope. But even as they regrouped, they knew the enemy would not accept defeat so easily. The next battle would be even fiercer, and their survival depended on the unity between the Orions and their human allies. Mira found herself standing by Raylan's side. As they reviewed the latest intel, the enemy was mobilizing rapidly, regrouping far faster than anticipated. Ron's brow furrowed as he analyzed the data, his mind calculating their next move. They are adapting, Raylan noted, learning from every hit we land. If we're going to win, we need to be 3 steps ahead. The tension was palpable for Mira. This alliance with the humans had already shattered many preconceptions. Their adaptability, their courage, and their innovative strategies were unlike anything she'd ever seen. Her people had always fought defensively, but Raylan had introduced them to a new way of thinking, a proactive, relentless pursuit of victory. She turned to him, curiosity and respect in her eyes. Commander, how do you stay so calm in the face of such overwhelming odds? Raylan smiled faintly, his gaze still fixed on the data in front of him. I've learned that fear and doubt are luxuries we can't afford in times like these. When you fight for something greater than yourself, you find strength where you didn't know you had it. Mara nodded, feeling that strength growing within her. The Arthans were a proud people, and this fight had pushed them to their limits. But she could see the change, how Ron's resilience and courage were inspiring them all. For the first time, they weren't just defending their planet, they were daring to believe they could win. Meanwhile, Ron's human team worked tirelessly, calibrating weaponry and fine-tuning strategies. Lieutenant K approached, ran with a new tactical idea, one that required both human and Aranan forces to work in perfect harmony. If we can synchronize our ground and air units in a pincer movement, she explained, we could corner the enemy, forcing them into a position they can't easily escape from, but it'll require absolute trust and coordination between our teams. Raylan looked over at Mira, his expression serious. What do you think me can your people coordinate with ours on this level? Me didn't hesitate. We can. Our warriors are ready, and they trust you. We're learning more from you than you might realize. The plan was set in motion, and as night fell, the Allied forces prepared for the most critical battle. Yet Aranan warriors stood shoulder to shoulder with their human allies, a united force, unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. As the enemy ships loomed on the horizon, a hush fell over the ranks. This time, there was no fear, only determination. Raylan raised his voice, addressing both humans and Arthans alike. Tonight we fight not as separate races, but as allies. We stand together, we fall together. Remember, our strength is in our unity. No matter what they throw at us, we will not back down. We will show them what it means to defend our home. A collective cheer erupted from the soldiers. The bond between the humans and Arthans had grown strong, forged in the fires of battle, and tempered by shared resolve. As the first wave of enemy forces attacked, the alliance moved in perfect synchronization. Aranan pilots covered human ground units, while Ron's team provided strategic support to Aranan fighters seamlessly. Blending their strengths, explosions and energy blasts lit up the battlefield. But this time, the Allies held their ground. Mira, leading a squadron herself, saw the enemy faltering, thrown off by the sheer power of their combined force. The enemy had come expecting an easy victory, but instead they were met with an unbreakable alliance. As the battle raged, me felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not just in her people, but in what they'd become alongside the humans. They were more than survivors, they were fighters. And as the enemy fleet began to retreat, battered and broken, me knew this was a turning point. The alliance had proven itself, and from this day forward, neither the Orions nor the humans would stand alone. They had forged a bond in the heat of battle, one that would endure beyond the war itself. the battle ended with a decisive victory. And as the dust settled, Raylan and Mira exchanged a glance of mutual respect and gratitude. They had come together as strangers but emerged as allies. And though the war was far from over, they had proven that united they were unstoppable. The enemy's last stand. The news of the recent victory spread quickly through the galaxy, shaking the confidence of their enemies and sparking hope among their allies. The united forces of humans and Arthans had shown that they were not to be underestimated. But both Ron and Mira knew that the enemy would not take this defeat quietly. They would strike back harder and with more determination than ever. As the leaders of the Alliance reviewed reports, an urgent message arrived. The enemy was mobilizing its entire fleet for a final assault, a massive invasion that would decide the fate of Oranos. It was a bold, desperate move. If they succeeded, Oranos would be lost. But if they failed, it would mean the end of their dominion over countless worlds. Mira looked at Rillan, her expression tense, but determined. They're throwing everything they have at us. This is their last chance to break us. Raylan nodded, a fierce determination in his eyes. Then we'll make this their last battle. We've come too far to back down now. Together, they rallied their forces, preparing for the largest battle any of them had ever faced. The tension in the air was thick, each warrior knowing that their survival and the survival of their world depended on the outcome of this fight. Every pilot, soldier, and engineer had a role to play. Ron's team worked seamlessly with the Aranan forces to bolster defenses, strategize maneuvers, and ensure every unit was battle-ready as they finalized their plans. Mi stood before her people. This is our home, and we will defend it with everything we have. Today we stand united, and no force in this galaxy can break us when we are together. Raylan followed with a speech of his own, addressing both the humans and Arthans. In the Alliance, we may come from different worlds, but today we fight as one. We've shown them our strength. Now we will show them our resolve. The Allied forces took their positions, and as the enemy fleet arrived, it became clear this would be a battle unlike any other. The sky darkened as ship filled the horizon, stretching as far as the eye could see. The ground trembled with the power of incoming weapons, and the roar of engines filled the air. The battle began in earnest, with both sides clashing in a storm of fire and fury. The enemy's massive ships advanced, launching wave after wave of fighters, but Ron's strategic maneuvers kept their forces nimble, and unpredictable. Aranan pilots used the terrain to their advantage, darting between mountains and valleys to evade attacks while launching counterstrikes on the ground. Arthian and human forces fought side by side, their bond stronger than ever. Mira led a squad of ground troops into a daring ambush, outsmarting enemy units and disrupting their advance. Meanwhile, Raylan coordinated the aerial assaults, ensuring the enemy fleet was continually outflanked and disoriented. Hours passed, and the battlefield was a chaotic whirlwind of energy blasts, explosions, and the thunderous sound of colliding ships. Yet despite the intensity of the battle, the Alliance held firm. Their unity, forged through hardship and mutual respect, gave them an edge the enemy could not match. But then, as the enemy fleet's flagship entered fray, it unleashed a weapon of unimaginable power, cutting through their ranks with devastating precision. For a moment the Allied forces faltered, and doubt threatened to seep in. Seeing this, Raylan quickly rallied his troops. They're trying to break us, but we won't let them. Remember why we fight, remember what we're defending. His words reignited their courage, and Mi's voice joined his. Aranos is ours, and we will never surrender. With renewed vigor, the Alliance surged forward, pressing the enemy on all fronts. Ron's team developed a daring plan to disable the flagship, knowing it was the key to the enemy's command structure. He led a squadron of elite pilots in a high-risk assault, weaving through enemy fire to approach the flagship's vulnerable points. Meanwhile, on the ground, Mira's forces pushed back the enemy troops, reclaiming vital positions and securing the defensive perimeter. Her bravery inspired those around her, and every Athan and human fought with renewed strength as Raylan and his squad closed in on the flagship. The battle reached its climax. Dodging volleys of fire, they managed to breach the ship's defenses, targeting its control systems in a last-ditch effort to end the battle. Finally, with a powerful strike, they disabled the flagship, causing chaos among the enemy ranks. Without their central command, the enemy forces faltered, and the Allied troops seized the advantage, launching a final coordinated assault that shattered the remnants of the invasion. As the dust settled, and the last of the enemy ships retreated, a victorious cheer rose from the Allied forces. They had faced overwhelming odds, but their unity and courage had carried them through. Raylan and me stood side by side watching, as the skies cleared, the sense of victory settling over them. They knew that this alliance built through trust and shared sacrifice had saved their world and reshaped the galaxy forever. In that moment, they were not just two races fighting a common foe. They were allies bound by a bond that would endure through whatever challenges the future might hold. A new alliance, forged in victory. The aftermath of the battle left Oranos quiet, but filled with an energy that was hard to describe, one of relief, pride, and a renewed sense of hope. The alliance had done what was once considered impossible possible. Together, the humans and Arthans had defeated an enemy far more powerful than either could have imagined. Facing Al as the debris of the enemy fleet drifted away from Oranos, Raylan and me stood on a high balcony, overlooking the landscape. The damage to their world was clear in the battered cities and scorched lands, but it was also apparent that they had saved it from a much darker fate. Me looked over at Raylan, gratitude and respect in her days. You and your people have done something extraordinary here. You've shown a strength, resilience, and a courage that I had never believed possible. Raylan nodded, humbled. Your people taught us just as much, Mira. It was only through our alliance that we managed to protect Oranos and survive the onslaught. None of us could have done it alone. Word of the victory spread quickly across the galaxy, reaching worlds that had been under the shadow of the enemy's power for years. Some had seen the humans and Arthans as outcasts too different from each other to ever unite. But now they were a beacon of hope, a symbol of what could be achieved when ancient divisions were set aside. The Galactic Council, which had long looked down on Earth as a distant primitive world, sent representatives to Oranos to witness this alliance firsthand. Their expressions ranged from shock to awe as they saw how the united forces had succeeded against all odds. The sight of humans and Arthans rebuilding side by side moved even the most skeptical council members, and they knew that the galaxy would never be the same. In the days that followed, Oranos became a gathering ground for new discussions about peace and unity. Leaders from countless species arrived, eager to learn about this newfound alliance. Raylan and Mira were invited to speak before the council, to share their story and the strength that unity had brought them. As they stood before a vast assembly of council members, Raylan began, his voice steady and clear. For too long we've allowed our differences to define us, to keep us separated. But this alliance with the Arthans has shown us all that diversity is our strength. Together, we are greater than the sum of our parts. Mira took a step forward, her voice carrying a fierce conviction. We all face threats to our survival, and none of us can overcome them alone. Our alliance with humanity has proven that when we join forces, we can achieve the impossible. It's time we extend this unity. Across the stars, the room was silent, every being present captivated by the powerful message. The council members exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement. Slowly, one by one, they began to applaud. It was a hesitant sound at first, but it grew, echoing through the great hall, a sign of acceptance, of newfound hope for peace. As Raylan and Mira left the chamber, they looked at each other, knowing that their journey was far from over. They had fought side by side, and they had won. But now, a new challenge awaited them, helping to reshape the galaxy into one of cooperation, understanding, and strength. Back on Oranos, the rebuilding effort continued. Human engineers worked with Arthan architects to restore what had been lost, and to create a future that embraced both their worlds. Raylan and Mira's friendship had become a symbol of the alliance, and both their peoples looked to them for guidance and inspiration. Over time, alliances between other worlds began to form, inspired by the unity of the humans and Arthans. The galaxy, once fragmented and isolated, began to see the power of cooperation. And while the threat of war still lingered in distant corners, the combined strength of a united galaxy made such threats seem less daunting. As Raylan prepared to return to Earth, Mira met him for a final farewell. Promise you'll return, she said, with a smile. We have a galaxy to rebuild together. Raylan grinned, extending his hand. I wouldn't miss it for anything. They shook hands, their alliance now a bond that extended beyond the battlefield, a friendship forged through fire and sacrifice, destined to shape the galaxy's future. And so the legacy of the human Arthanian alliance spread across the stars, a beacon of hope, a promise of unity, and a reminder to all that even the most impossible of dreams could be achieved when worlds stood together.